All right, welcome. Today we are painting this beautiful inspiration. It's still life theme, and I loved the colors. I love the simplicity. We don't always do still lifes. I see two bowls here. If you don't want to do two bowls, you could just do a single bowl. But the perspective of this is that we're kind of looking down, sort of on an angle, onto the oranges, which is kind of an interesting thing. We'll try to keep this as simple as possible, but we'll be playing really beautifully with the background details and the oranges in the foreground. And I hope you enjoy it. But my name is Megan if you're new here. For the ladies that are here, so great to see you as always. I am excited to do something different with you for today's class. So the supplies that I have on hand, I am using 11 by 14 acrylic paper. I'm using palette paper as my plate. It's kind of like a wax paper. Uh, if you don't have this, you could use any kind of plate at home for mixing colors. And I have an array of brushes, small, medium, and large, like I usually have. You could use a larger brush if you want to. This is kind of a inch style brush for large coverage areas. And then I have detailed brushes for some of the more detailed, smaller areas for our paintings. If you want to grab a Sharpie to use as an accent tool, I always encourage you to consider what other mediums, other supplies you might want to use. For these classes, I always leave that up to you. So don't have any concerns of bringing in other things if you want to for any finishing touches at the end, okay? I always have a pencil in class just in case we do any sketching along the way. That may be helpful for us. So maybe we'll sketch some of the bowl area and maybe sketch some of the oranges just to get the shapes right, and then we can fill them in. That might boost our confidence a little bit. And then I have an array of acrylic paints. So I have red, blue, yellow. If you don't have green or orange, you can mix those. I do have a green, but I don't have an orange. So guess what? I'll be mixing orange today for our oranges, which is just yellow and red mixed together. So we'll do that together. And then I always have black and white to either lighten something or to add like a more shaded tone to a given object. And then I have some water to rinse off my brushes. But I want to thank you for being here today. We have these classes monthly. I do one acrylic class a month and one watercolor class a month to offer variety. And I love doing a little bit something different here and there. Okay, so one of the things we're going to do, we're going to start really, really easy. We are going to paint the background first and work our way to the foreground. We're going to go pretty quickly through the background just for time's sake, and then we will shift to the foreground. So I'm going to do I'm going to mix a nice light blue color for the background as our first step. So to mix a light blue, I am going to grab a little bit of white paint and a little bit of blue, and I'm going to find a nice light blue color of choice. Now, everybody's using different colored blues, so just use your best judgment on what you want this light color blue to be. I'm going to start with white on my plate and add a little touch of blue. In the white, you're not going to need a lot of blue. A little blue is going to go a long way here. So I'm going to put a tiny dot of blue in my white because I'm just going to be really careful about how much blue I use. And I'm going to take my biggest brush, and I just did that. I'm going to get my brush a little bit wet. Kind of wipe off the water droplets. And I'm going to mix this blue around to get a nice light blue color. You want it to be lighter, add more white. If you need it to be darker, add a little bit more blue. It's totally up to you. And you can kind of wipe off some of the paint. And then this blue is going to be about 2/3 the way up. So I'm going to figure out where do I want my wallpaper to begin. So the blue in this picture is the table. So I'm going to do a line across for the table. Now I could have more wallpaper showing if I wanted to. I just went up a little higher. It doesn't matter. I'm going to paint this whole area down here blue. I'm going to do this pretty quickly. I'm going to do some nice smooth horizontal brush strokes. So in these classes, if you're new here, I encourage you to follow your own reaction and go along the way. And one of the really nice things to do is you can kind of listen to me along the way, but just don't feel like you have to watch my video. You can watch my video to kind of check in, but just to stay focused on what you're doing. You can listen and follow quite easily in these classes, and it allows you to kind of get in your own zone, which is really nice. If I'm going to go over any specific details, I will tell you, what we're going to be doing so you can follow along if you want to watch me demonstrate something. Otherwise, you are your own independent artist in these classes. And I want you to do nice, smooth, horizontal brush strokes. So again, listening to my voice, trying nice, smooth, long, horizontal brush strokes as you fill in this area. And we're going to fill in the whole area down here with blue paint. Now, if you wanted to bring in a little bit of water to stretch this, that's fine. Absolutely your choice. But I'm just going to do nice, smooth brush strokes. I'll show you what it's like to dip a brush in a little bit of water and move it around. You'll see the paint pigment move. Sometimes using those long brush strokes will give you a little bit more flexibility on removing any smudges that you might get from using just pure paint. So it's absolutely up to you. Just be open-minded on how the paint is applied and how you can manipulate it on your canvas. So I'm going all the way from that top line down. This is our table. This is where we're going to be putting our oranges, putting our bowl, etc. And I'm just doing some nice smooth brush strokes. So it goes continuously off the left page and off the right. And if it's not, perfectly painted on, that's okay. I'm just going to go nice and slow. Maybe I'll dip my brush in a little bit of water. You could be light with your hand, left, right, left, right. You could just do long brush strokes. Get a feel for what's working well for you. So we're painting the table. Here comes my story. All right. So we're just doing this base background color and we're going all the way down to the bottom. And then we'll let this dry. We need this to dry before we put on our bowl. We'll work on our wallpaper on the top after this. But I'm so glad you're here with us. If you're new here, a warm welcome. For anyone that has been with us before, thank you for being a part of our artist community, whether that's Patreon or our YouTube space. We love having you with us. You are an important member of our community because you believe and support in all the values that go along with creating art and making time for yourself and trying new things. And we love getting to know you along the way. All right. And with art, the more you paint, the more you get familiar with what you like to paint. You kind of can play and enhance your own personal style, which is really fun. Sometimes it's fun painting the same thing. Sometimes it's fun doing something a little different. But you as an artist, you get to choose that. And we try to keep our art classes to have a little bit of variety, but it's fun to always just take your own spin on what our inspirations are. So if there's something you want to do different about today's inspiration, I encourage you to do that. Always encourage you to incorporate your own personal style and your own ideas into artwork. And I remind you that in every class, because usually in each of our classes, there's an opportunity to do that. Like the wallpaper that we're going to do next is a really good example of that. You can have your wallpaper be anything you want. I'm going to do these fun little dashes, which will be fun. And I have I have not a ton of wallpaper up here. I've focused kind of more on the oranges. So wherever you put your line will determine how much wallpaper you have here above your table. So I'm just gonna wash off my brush. And I'm going to think about, as I finish that my bottom area dries, for me, I'm done with that. I'm going to figure out, well, what color do I want my top part to be? It's kind of a grayish blue, so I might just mix a little bit of white and make a little bit of a gray and just give it a little bit of a grayish blue color. And it's going to be very light, very, very, very light. So I want you to figure out, you could always leave the white as white too. I'm gonna make this a little more even here. With some white paint. But I want you to figure out if you want to just do your background design for your wallpaper on the white, that's fine. Or if you wanted to do like a grayish color, that's fine too. So I'm just gonna mix a little bit of black. And take your time if you're not done the blue yet. I'm just making a little bit of a gray. I'm gonna bring a little bit of blue in this just to give a little bit of a subtle change up top. I'm mixing a little bit of that blue with a little bit of a gray. So I just have a kind of a light gray wallpaper. That's kind of what I'm going for. You can see that there. So I brought very little black into white. I'm going to make this a little more blue. But I'm just going to do it with a small brush. I'm just going to add a pattern of choice to the wallpaper. So it could be little lines. It could be anything. You could do little dots, like a little polka dot background. But I'm just going to do a solid color for the background first. So I'm going to do a gray. And I'm just going to get that on. But if you don't want to do the gray, you don't have to. Again, totally optional. I might add a little water to my brush and give it a little bit of a gradient. Let's see how that goes. Adding water will help with the blending. So I am going to grab a little paint and I'm just going to do a light fill. Again, you could just use the white background at the top. That's fine. I'm just adding in a little bit of a gray background just because I can. Adds a little bit more contrast, well, a little more shading rather. And I'm going to go right down to that blue line. We're going to put a darker line to separate the wall from the table after. So if this line isn't perfect for you, don't worry about that too much right now. So as always in these classes, I encourage you to take your time. If I'm going quickly here, so I just want these layers to get down and dry. We're going to be putting a lot of stuff on top of these, so it's no big deal. I'm doing some long, smooth brush strokes. And if you want to do a thin layer of paint, if you do a thick layer of paint, it's going to take longer to dry. So I'm going to come right down to my tabletop, which is this blue. This blue area is a table. And this is kind of if we think about perspectives, like a macro perspective on something or a micro perspective, right? By zooming out versus zooming in. This is a pretty close up. These oranges are, a foot or two probably from us. So I'll make them a little bigger, which is always fun. But again, a little water. And I'm just gonna do some blending here and then we'll give our top background a minute to dry. And if you run your brush over an area, that will help it dry more quickly because you're moving around all those wet molecules. And if you're using acrylics dries pretty quickly. So this line isn't perfect. It's okay. I'm going to come in and refine that after. One of the things that I'm thinking about is, do I want to make this background a little lighter? You can see that it's not as light as the one here. I might take a little bit of white paint and just make some modifications. Just maybe lighten it up just a tiny bit. So if you need to take a minute to lighten something or finish with a layer, feel free. But I'm going to, for me, I'm just going to lighten it up just a little bit. And even maybe it's just up towards the top. I don't know. I'm just going to see what happens. Oops, that's too much. So I'm just going to lighten it just a touch, maybe in here. Again, art is all about your perspective. It's okay to paint more paint on top of what you've just done. I love kind of knocking down the barriers of that your art has to be one thing and you can't update anything. Art is something that you get to choose what you make, what your brush strokes are, where you add color. If you want to fix something, just do it. See how I softened that a little bit right there? For me, that was important. I wanted to lighten it just a little bit. It was very subtle, but in these classes, we do what brings us happiness and joy, and we cut everything else out. So again, I want you to use your favorite colors. I want you to do whatever textures you want. But my goal right now is I want that top wallpaper to dry so I can do my wallpaper design. This bottom area can dry as well, but I'm just fixing this just because I wanted to spend an extra minute here. There's nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that at all. I'm going to put a lot of other things on top of it, so I'm not striving for perfection in this class. I'm just giving it a good go in that regard. And as that's drying, I think I'm happy with those details. I'm finding a small brush to do some of my design work with. And I love these little lines. And I'm going to do my background, my wallpaper next. And I'm going to make a navy blue color personally with a little black and a little blue. And I'm just going to do little vertical lines. So whatever you want your wallpaper color to be, your design, it could be swirls, it could be little polka dots. You want to get that in now. So I'm just mixing blue and black together to get a navy. This is pretty dark, but I think I'm just going to roll with it. And I'm going to just do little lines. I'm going to do a line down and take a break. Line down, take a break. And then I'm going to stagger the next line over. So this is just, my idea of what I wanted to do. You don't have to do this. These are like really close together, which yours, you could add more space in between your vertical lines than me. That's totally fine. So this is going to be pretty condensed looking, which is fine. But you do you. If you paint something you don't like, you can always paint over it. But I'm just going back and getting a little bit more paint. And I'm putting the lines kind of in between each of the gaps as I go. So I'm kind of going a little higher and a little lower. I'm staggering those lines as I do the vertical points. So this is just me creating a consistent wallpaper look using lines. Just going to kind of follow the rhythm, kind of work your way across. Again, dots are way easier than doing lines in a consistent pattern. I wouldn't even call this consistent. It's more of a theme. My lines are not all perfect, which that's not what I'm going for. I'm going just for kind of a fun look. But take your time with your bottom area and your top background. Again, lots of tiny little dots is easier. Polka dots are fun. You could do lines. You could do pinstripes. anything you want for that top space is game. You can make that choice. I'm just getting a little more paint. I might run out of paint here, so I might mix some more in a little bit. But I'm just having fun with my pattern here for my wallpaper. And we're letting the bottom dry so we can do our bowl detail next. Now I'm going to try to keep today's class to about an hour and a half. You could easily spend over 2 or even 3 hours on today's inspiration. We're going to keep it really simple. If you want to put more time in, you can. It's absolutely up to you on how much time you want to spend on today's painting. I'm going to take a simplistic approach, and then I'll give you the choice to spend more time if you wish. Okay, is that fair? Yeah, I really love this inspiration. I think we're gonna have a lot of fun with it today. And this is good. We're all working on our design detail, and it's giving our bottom area a chance to dry, which is really important because we're going to do those additional layers right on top after we're done our backgrounds. Now, some of you might be done your background. You may not have picked something so complicated or detailed like mine, which is good. If not, just keep on working. Always take your time, go at your own speed. And I love showing up to these classes with, sometimes we show up with an idea, sometimes you don't. And it's okay to just go with it, because if you trust your intuition, you're gonna be able to follow along, no problem. And you will create something very cool and you will surprise yourself. It's quite nice. It's always fun to hear from everyone in these classes on how your artwork comes out, how you surprise yourself. You start to learn to where to challenge yourself to do something different, or maybe you want to stay in a safe zone and just enjoy the relaxation piece. So everyone approaches art and even each class in a little different way, which is awesome. That's what we're supposed to do. That's why we're here. We're here for us, right? So my background is done. I'm cleaning off my brush. I am going to take a little bit of blue paint, and I'm going to do a nice clean blue line, a dark blue line on top of the table, separating it from the wall. So I have like a nice blue color here. I'm going to grab a small brush of choice with this blue paint. And this is not a high quality blue paint, so I don't know how this is actually going to go. I'm going to try to do this as straight as possible. So I'm going to turn it for a minute. Do a nice straight line. See how I'm using a nice blue to create that difference between the wall and the table. And you can go nice and slow. And my line is not perfect, so just do your best. Don't be too critical. I use my pinky to stabilize my hand. You may feel more comfortable laying your canvas on a flat table. You may feel comfortable without an easel. I paint both ways in my classes, but today this is up on an easel. This line can be as thick or as thin as you want it to be. I just gave it a little bit of a second coat just to give it a little pizzazz. And I'm going to let that dry. So the goal here is to finish your wallpaper. Your table is painted blue and you have that blue line in. We need all of that to dry for the most part to do our bowl, which is our next step. So I'm just cleaning off my brushes, taking a little breather. Maybe I'll use a paper towel to kind of wipe some of my brushes off. But get that line in. Give you all a couple minutes to touch up those details. Give this a minute to dry, and we will press on with our bowl, which I will shimmy over so we can look at that. But we're gonna sketch the bowl. Once the blue line is dry, your wallpaper is dry, and your bottom table is dry, we're gonna sketch one bowl first, and then we're gonna put another bowl inside of it, which is gonna be really cool. And we can use a pencil to do that. So I'm gonna let this dry. If you need to kind of fan this around, that's fine. And we'll talk about positioning of our bowl, what blue space for surrounding space to leave. The goal is to leave, I would say, try to leave at least an inch, inch and a half. If you want to leave more than that, you can. I'm going to go for, and I'll even kind of measure with my fingers. If you are, detail oriented and you want to grab a ruler and actually measure, an inch or two from each side, you can grab a ruler and do that. So if I do an inch and a half, I could actually mark that. So it's up to you. Maybe 2 inches. So I'm just going to mark 2 inches with a little dot. Oh, this pencil is not working very well. I'm going to mark 2 inches over here too, just to show you. And I did 2 little dots. That's going to be the width of my bowl. And I have it so that there's 2 inches on the left and there's 2 inches on the right. That's going to be, my bowl is going to be in the middle here. Oh, here comes Susan. I'm coming, Susan. So yeah, my canvas is drying as well. So we'll give it a minute. Take your time. I'm not going to start drawing yet. I was just doing a little bit of talking and planning. Give that a memento. All right. So as things are drying, I'll talk through what some of the next steps are. There are two bowls. So there is a bottom bowl, which we will draw first, and it will be on the lower side. So the bottom bowl is going to be about an inch or two below the blue line. And the next bowl is going to come above on top of the wallpaper. And that's where we're going to put our oranges inside of it. So we're going to do two bowls. One, our bottom bowl is going to give us grounding and structure. And then we're going to draw another bowl inside of it that's a little tilted. And I'll talk about the angles and all that after. And I will use a Sharpie so you can see my lines. So I want you to start thinking about, if you want to start drawing, that's fine. Two really important things: having whatever amount of space you want on either side. I did a dot here and I did a dot here. So my bowl is going to be on the inside. The other thing is I don't want your bowl to come all the way down. I want you to have plenty of space down here. This first bowl is going to be really narrow. So the bottom of my bowl is going to be about here. And I'll just freehand this because amen. There, I freehanded it. I'll do it with a Sharpie in a minute. Because we're going to have a dark blue shadow come on the underside, and there's going to be an orange. So if you want to play with doing just an open frame of a bowl here, all of our bowls are going to look different. So just go with it. I'm sketching it with a pencil. I'm going to come in with a Sharpie because, I like to live my life on the wild side. God help me. I'm not really too happy with it, but I'm just going to roll with it for y'all. So see how my bowl is narrow? And I kind of curl up the edges a little bit, and I have this top rim too. And then I have it curling back just a little bit, like there's going to be something inside of it. So it kind of looks like a big smiley face, doesn't it? Maybe we'll just do a smiley face instead of a bowl. I don't know. No, we won't. It's okay. We're going to put a nice pretty rim on it. We're going to paint it white, but you can see how narrow my bowl is. You can make yours a little rounder, play with your pencil, get your shaping right on that bottom bowl first. And we're not drawing a back line for this bowl because we're going to put another bowl inside of it. The secondary shape is a bowl that's going to be on a little bit of a tilt. So this bowl is pretty, parallel, horizontally parallel, straight. This bowl, the second bowl is going to be a little tilted. So what we're going to do is if you have a straight object nearby, that's fine. Or you can just, wing it. But the top of the next bowl is going to come, I'm going to use a pencil first. It's going to come up high. So I want you to use your finger and say, this is where this is how high I want my bowl to come into. So I'm just going to put a little mark right here and say, that's where I want the tip of my bowl to come into. So what you could do is you could just, come from the back side of this bowl, bend it up, connect to that dot up top, and you're going to do a rounded bowl. It's going to come over a little bit more than here, just a little bit, and it's going to come down, and you can pretty much come right down and in. So it's going to kind of look like a funny shape, but we're going to bring it to life, I promise, because we're going to create a little bit of an oval. So this is all going to be connected. So we're going to create a little bit of an oval opening. So I created a little bit of a line here that makes we can put the oranges inside. So I'll outline this with a Sharpie and it might come to life a little bit for you. And you can change your lines up if you need to. I might come a little higher up here. So it doesn't come over too much. It's going to come down and in. And then I created this oval-like shape right here for the opening. So it looks like there's another bowl inside of a bowl and it's tilted. This is where I'm going to put my oranges. So there's a bowl on the bottom and there's a bowl on the top that's a little tilted. And again, I played with how high it went onto my wallpaper. It's adding 3 dimension. It's going on top of my wallpaper. And then these edges line up pretty equally over here. But having this oval tilted opening space will help you with your bowl itself. If you wanted to, and it's helpful for you, you can draw in the border of the bowls because we're going to paint the border blue and the bowls will be white. That's for me. So I'm just doing I'm using a Sharpie to do the border for the top bowl, and I'm going to do the same for the top bowl and the bottom bowl because I'm going to paint this in as a next step. See how I added rims in? That helps visually. So no matter what step you're on, play with the drawing first and then do the borders because then you can paint your bowl so you won't lose sight of it. And then I'm just going to fill these in with white paint. So I'm going to fill this bowl in. This white paint is not very good. You may have, based on the type of paint you use, you may have a high quality white paint. You may have a lower grade. This is more of a student grade. I'll probably switch to a more heavy bodied white paint to paint and cover on top of the blue. If you don't have a white paint that's not having very good coverage, you're just gonna need more than one coat. That's no big deal. Just do a nice smooth coat to get started. I'm gonna grab a different paint in a minute. And I am probably going to Just paint the bottom bowl and the outside of these bowls first. Don't worry about painting the inside of the big part up top. We're gonna put some oranges in there. So just roll with that. But I'm gonna get a different white paint so to cover this blue more quickly. And the rims of these bowls are gonna be a beautiful cobalt blue. So wherever you're at, just take your time. If you're still working on your bowl shape, drawing can be hard. I recognize that. Just do your best. Everybody's bowls are going to be different shapes and sizes. I can tell you that right now. So let me get a little bit more paint. I have a higher, more thick bodied white paint. It's going to give me better coverage. That is better for today's class. For me versus my kind of student grade white paint, as I like to call it. So I'm going to see that difference in paint quality. I'm gonna go nice and slow. I'm using the edge. I'm using the big brush. I'm using the edge of the big brush to go right up against where that border is. And with still life, there is a lot of shading. We're doing really basic properties right now of just filling in basic colors, but we'll get into shading. We aren't going to spend a ton of time. I'll get you going with shading properties of adding lights and darks. I may even do a part 2 of this class if that's helpful for everybody. Or maybe I'll record a part 2 and post it with some more shading properties. That might be helpful for everyone. Because
That
this,
would be really helpful because I struggle with like the shading and the highlighting. That's like the hardest thing for me.
absolutely, I'm happy to do that for today's class. Maybe we'll get through some of the basics and then I'll do a part 2 recording that highlights some of those other details.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. I think that would be really helpful for everyone. Because then we're not rushed to get it done within an hour and a half. We could at least get the basics done, but some additional properties, we could do that. Because I have a feeling that I will want to do more because this one's coming out pretty cool. I like it so far. So you're going to want to do multiple coats of your white. You just don't want it to be sticky. So let the white dry and then come back to it. If you want to fill in some of this bowl, like where you're going to put the oranges, like just to cover up the wallpaper, feel free. Like that's okay. Because we don't want the wallpaper to come through because this is actually a bowl, right? So for me, I'm just going to cover up like the backside of this bowl. Maybe I'll put another color here, but I'm just covering this so the wallpaper at least doesn't show through. So I'm just using a white paint. At least to cover this edge, that will make me happy. And I'll probably do another coat. So if you wanted to do that, feel free. And then where the table and the wall meet, covering up that blue line, it really brings the bowls to the foreground. So my bowl is drying. Again, I'm going to want a couple coats of white paint. If you wanted to go in with a blue and add a blue rim to these where you have those borders, you're welcome to do that. I'm going to do that in just a minute. And it's okay to bop around and do one thing and another. Just find a pace that works for you. Sometimes we need one area to dry before we do another. So just know it's okay to like leave something unfinished to know you have to come back to it. Like doing a second coat of white paint is a good example of that. And if you need to get a smaller brush to get into some of these nooks and crannies, feel free to do that. I am going to grab a smaller brush for the blue border. And this will help your bowl kind of stand out one from another. So we are creating the vessel for our oranges to go in. And I'm doing a nice, beautiful cobalt blue. I'll probably put like a little dotted design on some of this rim. That could be really pretty of the bowl. Or you could leave it. Having your bowl curl around the edges. See how that edge right there kind of separates one from another? And it looks like in the inspiration, there's a rim that goes around the whole top, which I didn't do. So I can actually take this rim and do a blue line all the way around the edge of this bowl. So I'm just using my small brush and using my pinky for stability and doing a line around that whole back edge brim. If you wanted to do that, you could. I'm going to go around the whole back edge, right where my Sharpie line was. And that can connect to the other side of the bowl. Now, ideally, we want nice smooth lines. I didn't demonstrate that. Nice, clean, straight lines for the edges of these bowls, if possible. It's tricky. I'm going to let that dry. I may paint a little bit more white inside the bowl so the blue background doesn't show through. So if you wanted to paint more white on the inside of those bowls, you certainly can. I'm going to add a little bit more because I don't want blue to show. I'd rather have white show. This is the inside of a white bowl. Again, you can always do multiple coats here. It may not be necessary. For me, I just want to make sure the wallpaper is covered. Even if it's a light white color, it still does the job of just giving the bowl a little bit of that light color. Because these are white bowls with blue rims. And we're going to be putting a ton of oranges on the inside of these bowls, so the texture of the paint that you're putting in does not need to be perfect. You're really just covering this space. There we go. So it's at least covered. There's going to be more depth. We'll add in some more shading inside the bowls. We'll add some more shading on the bottom side of the bowls as well. But I'm going to make sure I have a nice blue rim. I want to be happy with the rim. Very important. If you want to do a second coat for the rim, you can. Absolutely up to you. But we really just want these first coats to dry. That's a really important component. If you want to play with a little bit of shading as you go here, you can take your white and mix a little bit of a light gray and do a little shading on the bottom side of this bowl. You can add a little bit of shading. So it's a little bit of black. So what I'm doing is I have white on my plate and I have black. And I am going to bring a tiny, tiny touch of black in with a little bit of white to create a gray color. So I'm just taking a scoop of my white and a tiny tip of black and make a gray. You want it to be very subtle. If it's too dark, just bring a little bit to the side and make it a little more subtle of a lighter gray. But you can do a little bit of a lighter gray on the underside of this bowl. This is, if you want to give it a little bit of a blue tinge, add a little bit of a blue to it. It's a really fun thing to try. So if I add a little bit of blue, it could be a bluish gray. Yeah, and I'm just going to give it a little bit of shading on the bottom. And I'm just doing a little bit of a scratching like brush stroke. If you want to get a little bit of white and kind of smudge it in with a little bit of white, play with adding a little bit of a grayish blue shading to the bottom of the bowl. Play with your shades, your color shades, all practice. You can always bring in more white, right? And cover up. You can, if you're doing a second coat, it's okay, but be playful here with just adding in a little shading. If you need to add a little white on top for it to blend in, that's fine. And then there's a little more shading on the underside of that secondary bowl too. So right in here, you want to make it a little darker down towards the bottom. Little bit of shading. So play with how much white you're using, play with how much gray you're using. Just know you can always bring more white in to help soften it. But I made a little bit of shading here. So I created shading as that bowl is set it inside. This is what takes practice, so just play with it. I'm doing soft, really simple brush strokes. Just know you can bring in more white to soften it if you need to, on like where the transition is from the gray to the white. You can grab a little bit of white and kind of soften it in, especially while it's wet, and help blend one color to another. And this is just one of today's practices, practicing how to blend colors for still life to add those shaded elements. So I'm kind of transitioning some of my gray to that bluish gray down here. And you can decide what's too light or what's too dark. Let it dry. Maybe you come in and you add a little bit more white to that top side of the bowl to blend in some of that gray. Enjoy the process of trying something new. I'm being pretty subtle here. I could be a little more dramatic, but I want you to start and play with wherever it's best for you. I'll add a little bit more contrast. But you can go as soft or as kind of bold as you wish here. You could do long, smooth brush strokes for your shading. You could do little kind of patchy-like brush strokes. It's absolutely up to you. But what's going to help us is this next part of this big shaded element below the bowl. So I'm going to use cobalt blue, and I might add a tiny touch of black to it just to make it a little darker. But I'm going to add a shaded element. That's this big blue blob down here. I'm mixing a little blue with a little bit of black, and I'll show you what that looks like. So if you want to like let this dry, it will come to life more with this shaded element. So the shaded element, I'm going to do little dots for guidance. So the first shaded element starts on the right, and I'm just going to put a little mark right there. And then the other shaded element, it kind of starts over here. So I'm going to do a big kind of oval-like shape, and it can go off your page. I'm going to do the tip of it off my page. Like this is the shaded area. So I'm just going to be bold and go off the page. And I'm going to go bold, and I'm going to go off the page. Now, if I wanted to change the shape of this, I can. I can come over a little bit more. I can come down a little bit more. But I'm going to fill this all in. So I'm going to come underneath the bottom side of the bowl. This is pretty grayish on the bluish grayish side. I can always change this color if I wanted to. But I'm going to fill this right in. I'm going to paint this whole shaded area in so it's nice and dark. And I'm going to use a bigger brush. I'm using a little one right now. For me, it's going to be more shaded. I might add a little bit more blue to my bluish gray. But just be bold about doing the shadow. It's scary. I know it's scary doing shadows. You all can do it. You can decide how dark or how light this you want this to be. You can always change the color. But get this shadow in, even though it's scary. If you don't want to do the shadow, that's fine. It's kind of an important part because I'm gonna add a little bit more blue to this. It's a little dark, but it's okay. Doing nice smooth brush strokes. Just know you can always paint over something if you don't like it. And we're gonna put an orange actually on top of this area, which will be really fun. So that's why we want to get this in and let it dry because it's gonna help kind of support the rest of the composition. And I'm doing nice rounded, smooth brush strokes to fill in the shadow. And I'm not really using any water. I want this to be a nice solid color, and I'm going right off the bottom of the page. Mine could be a little more angled, but it's okay. I'm rolling with it. All right. I'm gonna add a little more blue. So if you need to mix more colors, I'm kind of going back and forth between like a blue and a bluish gray. So just go wherever you wish in that regard. I went outside the lines, shame on me. So now my shadow has to get a little bigger. It's all right. Happy little mistake there, but we're just gonna turn it into a bigger shadow. Okay, and I just want this to dry. I want to have nice clean lines and I'm gonna let it dry. That's the name of the game. Because we're gonna put an orange on top of that. Maybe I'll bring this over a little bit more. Okay. That's what it's gonna be like. I might actually give it a little bit of an angle over here and just bring it over a little bit more. Because hey, why not? Feel like it needs a little bit more shape. My shadow kind of came straight down, which is fine. I wanted to try to have a little bit more angle. If I used a pencil, I could have planned it a little better, but I freehanded it, which is fine. So that's why it's helpful to use a pencil sometimes. There, so I added a little bit more of an angle to the side. I kind of brought it over a little bit more. But now I just want to make sure there's a nice clean edge. There, and I'm going to let it dry. I'm going to come in while the blue shadow is drying. I'm going to come in and do any white touch-ups on my bowl. So as an example, I can see my wallpaper coming through. I'm going to make sure that's totally white and filled in before we do our oranges. Even though, heavens forbid, there's probably going to be oranges over that. But if there's any glimpse of bowl coming through there, I want to make sure that I don't see the wallpaper. So I'm going to grab a little bit more paint. I'm going to use a little bit more white. Whatever you need to do for coverage areas, I want you to be happy with your bowl, the inside of the bowl, most importantly. The inside of the bowl also needs to be dry before we do the oranges, which is our next step. So we need the inside of the bowl to be painted entirely. The exterior of the bowl, you can play with more, but the interior of the bowl, we need to be painted so you're happy with it. We are going to be putting oranges pretty much on the entire interior, but for me, again, I'm just covering up my wallpaper for peace of mind. And making sure that I don't see the table line. That's also another important. I don't want to see the table line either. But we're going to be painting over much of this. And I'm just going to I just painted over my wallpaper. I can't see that anymore. Well, I can see it a little bit. God help me. But it's going to be good enough. You can be as particular as you wish. And since I have this brush, I'm going to give a little bit of a white line underneath the blue rim, just to give it a little bit of an extra pop. So a little bit of an extra white line. under the blue rim. You can use a big brush or a little brush. I'm using the flat side of the big brush. This will make the rim pop and stand out. Okay. So I'm going to keep an eye on the clock. We're going to start jumping in with our oranges. I'll give you all 2 minutes. I want you to make sure that your shadow is painted and drying. Mine is drying. I'm not touching it anymore because it's just a shadow. And I want to make sure the inside of the bowl is painted and it's drying. Really important for our next steps. So take a few minutes to do that. I'll keep an eye on the clock, give you all a few minutes there. If you need more time, that's fine. But focus on those two areas and giving them an opportunity to dry because we need to get the oranges in there next. And to do the oranges, we need to do a little bit of sketching. We don't have to sketch. We could just paint the oranges. They're all kind of layered in there, and I'll show you what to do with that in a minute. We could just paint them or you could draw them, either way. But we need this to dry either way. So my white is a little wet here. No big deal. So I'm going to mix an orange while we're doing whatever. So orange is yellow with a touch of red. So I always start with yellow with orange. I'm going to mix it on my plate. So a healthy dollop of yellow because we're going to use a whole lot of orange. And I'm going to bring red into the orange. So I'm going to put a little dot of red next to the orange. And then I'm going to use my large to medium sized brush. You could use a number 5 if you want. If you have a small flat tip brush, that's fine too. A brush you feel like you're going to be in control over. I might just use this number 5 round tip just to get the shaping. And I'm going to bring a little bit of the red into the yellow, and I'm going to make an orange first. So always mix your orange. Sometimes, based on the quality of paint you're using, you may need to add a little bit of white to help cover up what's going on. Luckily, we're painting on top of white, so that may not be a big problem for us. But I'm going to take a moment and to mix a base color orange. If you want to draw in your oranges first, you can. I'm going to freehand them. And you can kind of put them wherever. So I have my orange. I'm going to spin my brush so I have a manageable amount of orange on the tip. And you want all your oranges to be fairly the same size. Now you're not just going to draw circles. You want to imagine your oranges inside of the bowl. So I'm going to do an orange inside of the bowl. So paint one orange, maybe tuck in a corner of it so it's inside the bowl. One orange at a time, ladies. We got this. And we'll do a little bit of highlighting as we go. While the paint is wet. I have a little bit of a light, like a little bit of a reflection happening here. So don't mind that half my orange looks lighter. It's not. But I'm just going to fill this in nice and orangey. Go nice and slow. If you need to use a smaller brush, downsize to a smaller brush. You do want to maintain that round integrity. If you want to have a little fun with lighting, while your orange is wet, you can take a little bit of yellow paint, put yellow paint on your brush, and on this top side, you can add in a little bit, and on maybe along this edge, you can add in a little bit of reflection. Now you cannot see this very well, and I apologize. I'll bring this a little closer. You can add in a little bit of lighting. You can bring in a little bit. This is the top side of the orange. You don't want to bring it all the way to the edge, but add a little bit of lighting, maybe along the top a little bit there. Maybe go get a little bit more orange paint. See what you can do here as you blend your colors. This is all playful, right? You can do soft little brush strokes. You can make it way more bold than this if you want, but it's creating a little bit of dimension for our object, a little bit of lighting. Doesn't have to be fancy. You want to take a little bit of red and a little red and orange, you can make the bottom side a little more shaded. So a little lighter on top and a little red with a little orange for the bottom. And this might help get us going with some of those shaded properties. A little orangey red down towards the bottom. Doing little brush strokes with the tip of the brush. So this is just an opportunity for you to play and practice. We're going to do more of this, but I'm just giving you an opportunity to see how it goes while your paint is wet. Okay? Again, you can always go get some more orange and kind of help blend it in a little bit. You can create a little texture with the tip of your brush. See how I put a little lightness and it's shining from the top, and I put a little bit of the orangey red on the bottom. And it's becoming three-dimensional. Okay. So don't spend too much time there. That's just to kind of get the basic shape down. So maybe do a little bit of work there, let it dry, and then we're going to come in and we're going to do another orange pretty quickly here, okay? So we could spend hours doing those light and dark details, but I'm going to come in and put another orange in. The next orange is going to be over here. It's going to be off the page. It's going to be off the bowl rather, and I'm going to do just a circular orange. It's going to be kind of touching the other one. It could be a little bigger. I'm going to tuck it behind this other one. I'm not going to paint on top of it. I'm going to do a little bit of a gap in areas where it may touch. So I just did another orange there. I kind of tucked it behind. I left a little gap in between the two objects. And this is where I might need a little bit of cover up. See, I can see the blue. I might use some of that white paint just to do a layer. Sometimes I mix a little white, ladies, with my orange. Painting over blue takes a couple coats. So if you do a light colored orange at first, you can always paint more orange colors on top of it. This might help cover up that blue line. So this is where you just have a little patience. You might need a couple extra coats. So I just did a little bit of a lighter orange to help cover up the blue. I'll probably need more paint on top of this, but that's okay. But you can see I'm getting the oranges in place. That's what we're doing. Try to leave that little gap in between your objects to help you not lose shape of your objects. So I just want you to rinse and repeat. I'm going to tuck in another orange here. You can layer them in and behind one another. Leave little gaps if you need to. I like tucking them inside the bowl. So I always start with that plain orange, and then you can play with bringing in other colors. I'm going to try to stay focused on getting the oranges in, because then we can play with the other details after. And if I do a part two, I'll go over some of those details. So focus on getting those oranges in like that. You want them to be as round as possible. So kind of lean back in your chair. Get the shapes right. Take your time. I'm going to leave some white space on the bowl over here. So I'm going to tuck in, I'll do another orange here on top. So this orange, focus on the shape, and then you can tuck it in where you need to. So I'm going to tuck it, I'm going to leave a gap around this side here. And you can work on those gap areas after, but it's good to leave those gaps. I'm going to mix a little bit of white to cover up this blue, white and orange, just to cover up this blue line. And I have wallpaper up here. I got to cover up that wallpaper too. And again, it might take a couple of coats. That's okay, but get your oranges in. If you have gaps in between your oranges, we're going to put more oranges inside there, but just do your basic orange shapes first. Really important. Because we could tuck more oranges in the background if we need to, which we will. So I'm going to tuck another orange here. Again, I'm going to leave part of this side edge showing. So I'm going to just put a little orange here and leave a gap. So this is the fun part. If you tuck your oranges in, if you have gaps like me, this is cool. You can kind of come in here and create faux little oranges by just including more gaps. So I'm kind of filling in, but I'm leaving a little bit of spacing. So I'm leaving the spacing here. But it looks like my bowl is becoming filled with oranges. So try that. I am going to, I'm going to put some green leaves. So I have white space here and I have white space over here. I'm going to put a green leaf over here and I'm going to put a little green leaf over here. But you can decide if you want to add more oranges. Everybody's oranges are going to be different sizes. So just add as many oranges as you want. I am intentionally leaving the white space in the bowl because I'm going to put in green leaves into some places. You want to get fancy and add in a little bit of that yellow, on the top sides. You're welcome to play with that. Again, I'm working on coats in some areas, so you kind of have to be patient along the way. You do the coats where you need to. So I'm doing really nice basic coverage. You can see my oranges. I can see the shapes around them. I can come in with a little bit of the yellow. Really, I could go abstract if I wanted to. I could smooth it over, a little bit of that lighter color on top. And I'm going to bring a little bit of the red on the underside just to show you in its most simple form. A little bit of the red on the underside. It just acts as a little bit of shading. Right? Wherever you see the white in between, we're actually going to be using, there's going to be an outline of some kind. It's a dark outline. You could use paint to do that with a really fine brush. You could use a Sharpie. You could use an ink pen. Totally up to you. but leave the gap there for now. That will help you not lose sight of one or another. I'm going to slowly bring in a little bit of the shading principles. So a little bit of the red oranges on the bottom sides. Again, mix this with a little bit of orange. It doesn't have to be just a red. Play with your brush strokes. Grab a little orange. If the red goes on too heavy, grab a little orange to settle it in. You can let something dry and paint over it, right? That's okay. You could play with blending, smudging with your finger. I'm going pretty abstract with my brush strokes, but you can do smudging with your finger, like to really help. Look at this, blend those colors in. Smudge it with your finger. Even circular may give it a little bit more of a circular orange shape, right? So that's really fun thing to try, smudging it with your finger. You could even do that with the yellow a little bit. We'll be adding like the orange top too, but I want you to play with some of those colors. You want these gaps to be as narrow as possible. So I'm going to try to eliminate some of these, the large white areas. I want them to be really narrow. Once you have a dark outline around those oranges, you can easily get rid of all of the white, but I'll keep them from now. There's another orange on the bottom. So I'm going to pick down here. I'm going to put another orange down here. I'm going to use a little bit of white. Imagine that to cover up this blue. So I'm putting an orange on the table. This is circular. You can't really mess up the shape. Just do it nice and round. Which I'm having a hard time doing. So I can use just orange and white. And I'm going to put more orange on top of it after. So coat 2. And I'm just going to let it dry. It's not perfect. As long as I'm happy with the shape, which is fairly decent, I'm just going to let it dry so I can do more orange on top. Okay, so I'm going to let that orange dry. I have oranges in my bowl. I'm going to clean up my brush. If you want to use a little black or make a brown with a tiny brush to add a little bit of that, the top of the orange. Red and green will give you brown. I might just put a dollop of green on my plate, mix a little bit of orange and brown together and see what happens here. I have a little bit of red here too. Just want a darker color. Doesn't even have to be. I'm just gonna do a little circle. You could even put a little water on your brush. You want it just a fine tip. I'm using a pretty big brush. I should probably downsize, but I'm just gonna do a little tiny circle here for the orange top, just a little bit. You could change the placements so they look a little natural. Maybe this one's up here. There's branches on these top oranges with leaves. I'm going to do the little brown spots up top because I'm going to, and I just did little tiny brown spots, nothing crazy. And I'm going to do leaves and a stem coming from the tops of some of those. And maybe my little orange spot, my little brown spot will be down here. So this is just the painting coming to life just a touch. I'm gonna remove this light to see if it's any better for us. That's a little better, a little less shine, a little darker. So the oranges are not done, but I'm gonna let them dry, kind of let them think about what they want to do. And I am going to come in and if my orange down here needs a quick second coat, you could do a second coat, but we'll do the green leaves next. That will really help to tie everything together. But the orange is okay to dry. You're going to come back to them, so don't worry. I'm going to come in and just do an orange down here. Just doing a second coat of orange on this on the blue area. And I'm going to let that dry and then I'll work on some of the green leaves. But you want the oranges to dry as much as possible. I'm probably going to do either a Sharpie or if you have a small, like if you have a very small brush, you can do the black outline detail or brown outline detail. You can choose what dark color you want to use. I'm going to let that orange dry down there. I'm going to clean off my brushes. Ladies, if you have any questions, let me know, but I'm sure you're doing just fine, but I'm here to help you, of course, along the way. You can look at the white space that you have in your bowl. It looks like I have some gaps, but I'm going to put some leaves in and it's going to fill my bowl in pretty quickly. So I'm not really shaking in my boots over here because I know I'm going to put a leaf on the left. I know I'm going to put a leaf on the right, and I'm going to put some leaves on top. And I'm going to tuck in, if you need to mix a green, you can try that. I'm going to grab a small brush of choice. I'm going to grab this green. This green is like a grass green kind of color. I have a number 2 brush. I don't know, this is probably a 3. I'm just going to grab a little bit of this green, spin it on my brush so I have a nice fine tip. I'm just going to tuck in a leaf just so you can see it's not so scary. So I have a big gap over here. I'm going to tuck in a little green pointy leaf right here. And I'm going to fill this green leaf in next to the oranges so it looks like it's a part of the picture. And if I want to come right next to those oranges, I can. I'll bring this a little closer if I can. There we go. Sorry, I'm a lefty. My hand's kind of in the way. All right. So I'm just going to fill in this green leaf and I'm tucking it. I can touch the orange. It's okay if the green touches the orange over here. So there's a little leaf. I'm going to do another one over here. If I want that leaf to be darker, which I'm going to add some shading to it to make it darker, no problem. There's another leaf over here, which you can see in the picture, tucked in over here. I'm going to go right up against this orange. And you can add as many or as few leaves inside the bowl as you wish. I'm just going to paint these and let them dry. Now there's a lot of leaves on top. This one's going to be a little bigger. So you can kind of lean back in your chair and make design choices of if you want to make it bigger, if you want to add more, etc. I do like seeing some of the white of the interior of the bowl. I'm not going to fill it entirely. But this is where we can have some fun doing some leaves on top. Okay. So one thing you can try is if your oranges are still wet like mine, don't worry too much. But I'm going to grab a little bit of this green paint and if you did this little, top part of the orange, I'm going to do a little stem coming up. You may not see that or not. I'm going to do another stem on this way, but I'm going to come over to the left a little bit. And then I'm going to do some of these long finger-like leaves coming off. So this one's going to come off and over. I may do another little one coming up here because I want to put one coming off. And then I'm going to put a little one coming down, maybe tuck behind. I am going to make them darker. I'm going to do another one coming down on top of this as well. My orange is a little wet, but I want to show you what it's like to get some leaves in. So there's some leaves tucked in. I didn't do too many. It's okay. I am going to, if I don't like what I did, I can always paint over it. I might do another little leaf right there. And then if I want to do a leaf coming down and in like this, I could do one on top as an example, just being courageous and showing you could do a leaf on top of an orange. You could do a leaf coming down. Overlap your leaves with your oranges a little bit. My orange is still a little wet. It's okay. I'm going to do more coats, so it's all right. Long leaves with a little bit of a wideness in the middle. I'm going to make my stems a little darker. And that's it pretty much for leaves. You can add, again, as many or as few as you wish. There's like another weird wide one that comes off to the side here. But I'm just gonna let that dry. I'll add more shading to the bowl. There are a couple leaves down here. I'm gonna add a little bit of white to the green to do the leaves down here. So there is a little bit of a leaf over here. There's another leaf. And again, I'm using green and white. This leaf kind of comes on top of the bowl a little bit, which is interesting. And then there's like kind of a leaf that comes on top a little bit down here. Again, you can use white paint to can play with the shapes of your leaves. So there's a little bit of a leaf situation happening down at the bottom. Do as much or as little as you wish. I'm really being footloose and fancy free here just to show you that I want you to play with shapes. I want you to play with colors. We're going to come in and do more accent colors and details along the way. But this is just kind of a fun way to lean back in your chair, play with different leaf shapes. I have another one that comes on to this a little bit. And I'm going to make some of these leaves have some darker areas. So like a darker leaf would be like mixing a little bit of green and black together to make up like a more of a forest green. And then maybe picking one side of the leaf to add a little bit of contrast to. You could do it while it's wet or you could wait for it to dry. Either way is fine. Being a little spontaneous. It's okay to mix colors. Again, I'm going to make my stem a little darker. I'm using like a green and black color mixed together. Your stem could be darker. I'm using a green and black color. You can see that contrast start to come through. Don't take your time here. Don't feel rushed. Play with where you have darker greens and lighter greens. And I encourage you to kind of bop back and forth between darker and lighter colors. That will give you an opportunity to play with some of the textures, right? Like we did for the oranges. So you don't have to wash your brush, just play with adding a little bit of a lighter green and a darker green and see what happens as you bring out these elements. Lean back in your chair. I'm going to grab a really thin brush. I'm going to do a little bit of dark paint around the edges of my oranges so I can fill in those gaps. So for me, I'm just grabbing a small brush of choice. And I'm just going to grab this black. You could mix green and black together. You could mix whatever. This is your choice. I'm going to add a little water as I use a small brush, a little water on my paintbrush to make it easy to smooth and to flow around. And I'm going to go really slow and do a dark outline around my oranges. And whatever I don't fill in with the black outline, I'm going to go in and add orange around it, like in those white gaps. Or green to fill the bowl. Does that make sense? So I am using a steady hand and a small brush. And I'm dancing around each orange. I have a little water on the brush. Gonna allow your oranges to stand out. I will allow you to fill in. My leaves are on top of my orange, so I'm doing the outline of the orange. Behind. Always touch up. I'm just doing the rounded orange shapes. You can see they're starting to jump off the page. We're gonna let this black dry entirely before you fill into those nooks and crannies, okay? And yes, you can do an outline around the bottom orange as well. So again, this class could be an hour and a half, it could be 2 hours, it could be 2.5 hours. You could easily spend 3 or 4 hours on a painting like this, but I always love to take a simple approach. You can spend as much or as little time as you wish on these details. I also would do an outline, again, time consuming, but it might look really nice. A black outline around your leaves as well and around your stem. These are just details I think would really make your painting pop. I'm going to do a quick outline. Again, I would wait till you paint all your leaves in, but I'm just going to do it around a couple so you can see the difference. But I would do it at the very end. Once you're happy with your leaves, do the thin black outline. If you don't have a thin, fancy black like a brush, you can use a Sharpie. You could use a black ink pen. You choose, but it would look really nice if you wanted to try this. If you don't like this look, you don't have to do it. Isn't it nice to have options? So I'll outline one of these leaves with so you can see it, so you can make a choice if you want to do black outlines for your leaves. So let me just finish this orange and these outlines so you can make a choice if this is something you want to do or not. So this orange in the middle right here has the black outlines, which I personally like. It's my leaves need to be touched up some, but I like the contrast. And I'm going to just do some gentle outlining. So I'm just going to take a minute. I'm having a lot of fun doing the outlines on the leaves. So I'm just going to keep doing this and I'll play with the green inside after. I'm just enjoying myself. So whatever step you're on, it's always fun to know that you don't always have to follow me exactly what I'm doing at every point. As an artist, you kind of just go with the flow, feel your own groove and whatever you're doing. And this video is recorded, so you can always catch up after if you want to see any things I did in particular. Again, any white nooks and crannies inside this orange area, we're going to fill in. We're also going to add a little bit more of shading inside the bowl so it's not so punchy white. So if that's bothering you, don't worry, we're going to do that in a little bit here. But I will offer a part 2 on this class. I will spend more time on the oranges and on the bowl and on the rim detail. I'm going to get a little bit more black paint for the detail. But I hope you all are loving this so far. I love how it's all coming together. Your orange detail, you can always keep working on your orange detail. You know, I didn't cover my oranges too much. I still have plenty of room in here to go in. We will add some shading in the bowl before we wrap up today. But it's just adding a little bit of gray shading. Again, I'm going to put a little bit of water mixed with my black. It helps make it move around a little easier if you're doing any outlining. Spinning your brush on the side to have a nice fine point will also make your life easier. And I encourage you to, for your green leaves, add a little dark green, add a little light green, play with the texture of the leaves. You can even add a little bit of brightness to the leaves. I'll do that too for us. In our part two, I'll add a little bit of a light green, I'll add a little bit of a dark green. Just gonna outline these leaves down here. And then I'll shift to the bowl for you. It's always fun to play with the shapes of the leaves, how wide they may be, how narrow they may be. Again, a little water can help with blending. It can help with edging. So don't hesitate to add a little water with your paint. And that's for all types of paints. Helps it smooth out a little bit. So there's my orange on the bottom. I'm going to add some lightness. I'll add that little brown touch, you know, over here. I'll add some more shading here on the bottom. You can use whatever darker color that you wish for shading. You could use a darker brown if you want more of a contrast, right? You can pick and choose how much contrast you want for some of these areas. But I'm going to add a little contrast inside the bowl. See how in this bowl it looks a little more gray? We were using on this bottom side that bluish gray color. I want you to add a little bit of a bluish gray color on the inside of the bowl to add it, make it look a little bit more dark. And I'll let you pick and choose what you want that to be. Let me see what I have for colors on my plate. I have a little bit of white and blue and a little black. So I can make a grayish blue using a little white, a little blue, and a little black. And you can go as, wouldn't go too dark, but you can go as dark or as light as you wish. This color is pretty dark. I need a little bit more of that white paint. And Dory, you can use that dollar store paint for this. That doesn't matter. You're not covering too much up. You're just using it for a second layer, right, on top. And I have that right next to me too. So it's okay to use different paints for different things. But I'm going to come in here and I'm going to make this a little darker. I'm going to slowly dance around these oranges, around these leaves. I'm going to add a little shading on the inside of this bowl. Now I'm going to use a little water to play with the blending. I'm going to do the same thing down here by these oranges in this leaf. So I'm just going to go nice and slow. And if you happen to paint on top of an orange or on a black outline, it's okay. You can always go back in and touch that up. You may want to go darker in some areas. It's totally up to you. This is where you can be playful about what colors you want to use and where. So maybe I use a little bit of a darker gray. And then I use a lighter gray as it comes further out. So I'm just being really playful about what colors I'm using, because guess what? If I use too light of a color or too dark of a color, I can always paint over it. But it's kind of fun to think about what I want to put where. Now I have a little bit of a gap right here. I need to figure out what color I want to put I can either put an orange here, like there's oranges underneath, or I can put a little bit of the gray. I'm gonna put a little bit of the grayish color, a little water, spinning my brush to have a nice fine point, downsizing to a smaller brush will give you the right tools to fill that in. So you can see I'm creating a little shading there. Anywhere you want to create a little extra brightness, like if you want to add a little brightness to like the edge of this bowl, you can tuck in a little bit more white. And again, you can use your finger to kind of smudge things around. Smudging is such a fun thing to do when you're painting. So that smudging worked really well. I'm going to do a little smudging over here. So with a little white paint and a little gray, I'm going to smudge this edge so it kind of blends from a gray to the darker colors. And you can play with the transition and blending, right? This is all a practice. I acknowledge that you don't do this all the time, so I encourage you to give yourself a little grace as you play with how you fill in any of this shaded area. I'm going to touch up some of the black outlines. That's, again, one of the things you do at the end, but I was having a little fun with it, so it's okay. It's okay to break the rules. You're in charge. If you go on that blue edge, it's okay. You can always touch that up. But you can see I've created some nice shading inside that bowl. That's what I wanted to do. I'm going to give, if you need to edge the side of your bowl, you could use black to edge the side of your bowl so your bowl stands out. Or you could use white. It's absolutely up to you. I'm going to just grab a little orange and fill in some of these orange gaps. Because I don't want any white to show through. So we kept some of the white to hold the shape in between. So ladies, I'm just coming in and adding in a little bit. I went in, I'll bring this closer. I went in and I painted those black lines. I tucked in some orange here and there to kind of just fill the bowl. I will do a part two for additional shading. If you don't want to do the part two, I'll just show you one more really fun detail to consider for the edge of the bowl, okay? Outside of the oranges and yellows and stuff. So let me just take a little bit of the oranges and yellows. I didn't do my bottom one, so I'll just fluff that in really quick just to add a little lighting to the top of this bottom orange, which look at that. I just gave it just enough, you know, just to give a little bit of lighting onto the top side of these oranges, and then you can add whatever darker color you want to the bottom. So you can see they kind of look like peaches a little bit, but when you have it up close, they do look like oranges in person, but they look like peaches on Zoom because the color. But I will show you a little of the white specks on the edge of the bowl. That's really going to make this like wow, and it's so easy. So I'm going to grab some of that dollar store paint, Dory, because there's nothing wrong with it for this step. And I'm going to put some of that on here. And with a really fine brush, I'm going to add just like a little bit of, I don't want to call it glare, maybe a little lighting on some of the edges. So I have a small brush of choice. I'll bring this nice and close for you. Okay. And I'm just going to get a little bit of this paint. I'm going to spin the tip of my brush so I just have a little paint. And then you can just do in little spots, maybe in the front, just do a couple of like little streaks. Just a little bit of like a dash and a dot, dot, dash, just on the edge of that bowl. You can do as much or a little of that as you want. It's just a little bit of lighting hitting the edge of that bowl. Now you can do it. You want still the blue to still show, but this is just kind of a fun technique. Dot, dot, dash. You can skip a little bit of an area, but it adds kind of a nice little lighting element to the bowl edge. See how it brings your eye? Lighter colors bring your eye to. I'm just using the tip of the brush. And what a big difference, right? To that edge.
Oh.
Yeah. So I'm gonna let mine dry. I did promise you all that I'll do a part two. I look forward to doing that. I will record it. Um, what I might do is I may open it up to a live event. So if you are interested in joining and want to do part two live, you can join. I'll post the Zoom information. If you can't attend the part two, then you can watch the recording. But I hope you all enjoyed this. I thought it was a lot of fun. I would love to see where you're all at if you don't mind sharing. And if you are watching the recording, thanks again for being here. It was great to see both of you. Thanks again for being here. And I will do a part two. So I'll post that in the Patreon space as a little bonus. And I look forward to seeing how your paintings evolve. But feel free to keep on working and we'll stay in touch. Okay.